in suburbs here in Melbourne, and a lot were on postcards. So really cool. The other thing I saw over here as we're looking around was a postcard that had Rover T on it. I am a huge Rover T fan to the point that I have a Rover T tattoo. So if anyone runs across one of those, let me know. I'd love to have one. So yeah, I'll kind of go through this, but as you can tell from the accent, I'm American. I'll go through this again when we get to the presentation. But I've lived here in Melbourne about 10 years. It'll be 10 years in July. So I'm new, but not that new. When I started doing this, though, I had no idea about the history of Melbourne, you know, much or Australia, really. Everything I knew, I kind of learned from the Simpsons episode where they go there, and it was actually spot on. So I don't know if any of you remember that. So
What's that? Oh, yeah, nine. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Real good. Sorry.
No, it's all good. Yeah, technical difficulty. This is always the toughest part, especially after you've had a wine or two. So, as we go through this, yeah, I've got a pretty good presentation. So, I did have a book published about 2 months ago. When I do these kind of things, I like to bring people stories that you can't find in the book for the most part. Although I do have one at the end that is in the book. But yeah, I really kind of tailored this to this group, so I hope you enjoy it.
Sorry, guys.
I was just making sure that they can.
Yeah. Can you guys hear us out in the internet land?
On
Yes.
Zoom? Yeah.
Good.
Thumbs up. All right.
Good. Now I want to get.
Yeah, we're mass communicating here.
Oh yeah.
Hello, internet.
Here, speaker. Okay, so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see them drinking. That's good. Now, for those of you on Zoom, now's the time to go grab a drink. Oh, there we go. Stephen Brown's got a drink. Nice. Thank you. Yeah, Stephen. Colin's got a drink, but it looks like coffee, unless he's got some whiskey in there, maybe. No.
Red wine.
I'm trying to get you back, but it's not. Okay. That.
What the hell's happened now?
Maybe.
Oh, God.
Why is it not bringing you up? If I do this,
Oh, yeah.
there we go.
Oh, there
we are.
There we
go.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So here we go. Technical difficulties done. Here we go. All right. Here we go. So I will begin today with an acknowledgement of country. So I begin today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where the ghost signs are found, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. While the signs I explore tell stories from the 1840s onward, I recognize that the stories of the traditional custodians stretch back tens of thousands of years. I honor the stories, cultures, and traditions of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and I celebrate the contributions of elders past and present across all communities who live and work on this land. All right, so here we go. Again, Robert T here. I do want to point out that this particular sign, it's on Lygon Street in Brunswick East. It's on a two-story building, and I'm standing at the very, very top of a very high ladder. So it looks like I'm just standing on the ground, but I'm not. I'm very, very high. I'm about 3 meters up in the air. So yeah. So who am I, right? So I kind of mentioned it before. I come from America. I am from the cornfields of the Midwest. I have always been fascinated by the stories that people, places, and inanimate objects can tell us. So I've also always been a bit of a nomad. I was saying to someone earlier, so I've traveled across the states. I've lived in about 6 or 7 different states. I've lived outside of Chicago. I've lived in St. Louis, Portland, Los Angeles. One time I was stuck in Danny DeVito's wall, but that story is not in this presentation. But you know, you get me drunk enough and come up and ask me, I'll tell you about it. So. Oh, go. So I started documenting these ghost signs during the lockdowns of 2020, wandering the streets and laneways with my daughter here, Quinn, who is now almost 7. Hard to believe. Yeah, so basically we just started wandering around. This was my first ghost sign when I was living in Seddon, and it basically came about me saying, "What are these things? You know, what is this? What is Eda peanut butter? Is that how you pronounce Eda peanut butter?"
Yeah, Eda. Yeah.
All right. So people like to tell me it's the opposite of whatever I say, so I'm glad. But yeah, this was on an old grocer sign in Seddon. I did launch a book, like I said. I will say that I lucked out. Scribe Publishing actually approached me a couple of years ago and asked if I would like to make a book. I started doing this on Instagram. I have about close to 29,000 followers now. So yeah, obviously there's a lot of love and interest in these ghost signs and the stories behind them. I also kind of want to mention, first and foremost, I'm not a historian. I'm an amateur for sure. I'm an amateur photographer, so I've taken all the photos that you'll see except for the historical ones on my Instagram. I've taken all those photos. So usually when an old building or something is knocked down and an old sign is revealed, I'm actually really lucky because people will message me. I'll get about 20 messages of people saying, "You got to get out to Ashburton. There's a building was knocked down and there's an old sign. Go out and get it." So, and I do. I try to get out there right away because these things only last. You know, they're only up for a little while. Either the building has been demolished or some other thing has been knocked down, and they can be graffitied. They can be painted over really quick. So I do try to get out there and get as many as possible. The other thing is the ghost signs themselves, they're beautiful. This is kind of a little like collage you can see of some of them, and these are all found within Melbourne and its suburbs. The other thing is like the stories behind them, they're all very human stories. And I think that's what's really fascinating is, you know, you see some of these signs and they're 100 or 130 years old, but the story behind them are something that we can still relate to today. And I think that is incredibly fascinating. So I will do a couple of definitions real quick, just so we're all on the same page. So the first one is ghost sign. So ghost sign is a ghost sign is an old faded advertisement, typically printed onto the facade of a building, though not always. This one is in fact is internal of a building. I stumbled upon in South Melbourne not too long ago, and they basically just last as you know, as a ghost or an echo of whatever product or business that they were promoting. Um, Some of the signs are 130 years old. This one is probably only about 30, 35 years old, but it's still a ghost sign. I think everyone here can remember VHS and video and everything. And then to think that that is a ghost sign, that really makes you think. Yeah. I found actually a ghost sign of a video game. So a poster for a video game that came out, and I thought, man, that's not really a ghost sign. It's only 10 years old. And someone said, no, that's 20 years old, and it's on a platform that's not available anymore. So when you start to think about these things, I guess it can scare you a little bit. I like to call this kind of stuff Jurassic technology. uh, Here we go. This is not far from where I live. I live in North Melbourne. This is on Abbotsford Street, or it was on Abbotsford Street. So ghost signs, they provide a window into the commercial and cultural history of a place. They showcase brands, products, and businesses of the time. And like I said, I like to dive into the lives that surrounded them. Check this out. That's what it looks like today. So yeah, they're called ghost signs, like I said, because they're just ghosts or echoes of what used to be there. So just about, but the swan is still there. You can still kind of read the word quality radio. When I first took this photo back in 2020, I think this one's a little more recent because I've taken more photos since then. But when I first took the photo, I had no idea what it said. So I had to look up whose slogan was quality radio. So Astor Radio. So a cultural archaeology. What is that? So it's a noun. Cultural archaeology. Oh, let me go back. Well, anyway, cultural archaeology is my made-up word for someone who basically goes and takes photos of these things and studies them to dig up and unearth the stories behind them. So a cultural archaeologist is what I call myself. Because if you're going to give yourself a title, it might as well be something that sounds really impressive, right? So I basically research and interpret these signs to unearth the findings of the stories about the people and the community that used to be there. This sign is in South Melbourne. All right. So we're gonna get the show on the road. I don't have any ghost signs for the Philatelic Society, unfortunately, but I do have a little bit of some stories. So I thought I might just start with you guys. So the other thing is all of these are about basically travel or exploration from a Melbourne perspective. Like I said, a lot of people haven't seen most of the signs that are in this because, in fact, the other day, about a week ago, Gary called me as we were finalizing some things. He wanted to make sure he hadn't heard from me in a while. I like to disappear, and he's making sure I'm still on board. And as he was, I was actually out looking for signs for this particular event. So some of these are very fresh. So here we go. This here, you can see it says the Vienna Cafe. So on a crisp Saturday in September 1894, the Philatelic Society of Victoria hosted the first postage stamp exhibition in Australia, held at the swanky Vienna Cafe on Collins Street. Now, I'm not sure how many of you knew about that. I would imagine you did know some, but I was able to unearth this kind of damaged photo, but this is from 1880, so several years after the event. This wasn't some dusty meeting of mustachioed men exchanging envelopes. This was stamps and schnitzel under one roof, which I think is pure genius. The press gushed over the novelty, the age dubbed the event an amusement, jazzing up the dull society pages of the day. Meanwhile, the magazine Table Talk couldn't help but rub in that exhibitions like this were periodically held in oh-so-civilized places like England, America, and the continent. So we get it. The Europeans did everything first. But credit where it's due, the Philatelic Society brought the goods, exhibiting rare stamps and postal history from every corner of the globe. Even the Duke of York and the Tsar of Russia got a nod for being fellow stamp collecting nerds, as if to say, see, it's not just us. The event was undoubtedly a triumph for philately, which really took me a long time to pronounce because I'm American and we mispronounce things normally, so something like that doubly hard for someone like me.
That was normal.
But it did this event, that first event, that set the stage for Australia's quiet obsession with stamps, a passion that would eventually require police protection and armed guards. By 1928, Australia's stamp obsession was in full bloom, and the Philatelic Society of Victoria decided to go big, international big. The Melbourne Town Hall became ground zero for the first global stamp exhibition on Australian soil. The collection was insured for £250,000, which in today's terms is roughly $8,537,753 AUD, adjusted for inflation. Every exhibit was locked in glass cases, flanked by 4 armed guards and 2 policemen. Not bad for bits of colored paper. The highlight of the exhibition was the rare and ludicrously expensive magenta British Guiana stamp, which at the time was worth £7,000. Now I saw it just sold a few years ago for over $8 million. But that was here in Melbourne. Pretty cool. A government printing press also turned out souvenir kookaburra stamps, allowing visitors to mail letters to themselves. Does anyone have this stamp or seen it? Just curious? Yeah? All right. Hey, a lot, yeah, happens like time. I'm just curious. I don't know. I'm just getting, oh, okay, all right. Tough crowd, yes. But I thought it was beautiful. I was like, man, that's great. So you could send yourself a stamp from an 1894 cafe spectacle to a town hall exhibition protected like Fort Knox. The Philatelic Society of Victoria transformed stamp collecting into an art form and an obsession. These weren't just gatherings of quirky hobbyists; they were monuments to a love of ephemera, human error, and an undying love for adhesives. Thank you for having me here. So that's my little bit of stuff I unearthed about the Philatelic Society. And this is a postcard from around the same era. Very good. All right, here we go. Next one, the rise and fall of Ansett. So it was 2021 and lockdowns continued to come and go, teasing us with freedom one day and snatching it away the next. During one of our releases from isolation, I decided to peacefully wander through the southern suburbs of Melbourne. Here we go. First ghost sign. It was then I stumbled upon the ghost of air travels past, a sign reading Ansett, the sports airline. Reginald Miles Ansett was the sort of man who could convince a starving dingo to part with his last bone. Born on Friday the 13th, 1909 in Inglewood, Victoria, he wore his superstitious birth date like a badge of honor, scoffing at naysayers who predicted his downfall. Ansett was a man possessed by a wanderlust and a love for machinery, which drove him to drop out of Swinburne Technical College at 14. By 17, he was assembling industrial knitting machines and earning a modest £7 a week. In 1929, Ansett sold his Buick, learned to fly, and briefly sought adventure as an axeman in the Northern Territory. The Great Depression cut his work short, sending him back to Melbourne. Determined to make something of himself, he bought an old Studebaker and launched a bus service between Maryborough and Ballarat, enduring fatigue, debt, and the relentless heat of the Australian outback. By 1936, Ansett had parlayed his modest bus service into Ansett Airways, buying a 6-passenger Fokker of the Hamilton-Melbourne route, for the Hamilton-Melbourne route, sorry. The airline expanded rapidly, introducing services between Melbourne, Mildura, Broken Hill, and more. Despite losing £20,000 in 1938, Ansett's dogged determination saw him through. He fought off a takeover by Australian National Airways in 1939, even as shares in Ansett plummeted. By 1942, with government support, Ansett Airways was finally turning a profit. But Reg knew aviation was as stable as a one-legged kangaroo on a trampoline, so he diversified, buying Pioneer Motors in 1944 and venturing into tourism, hotels, and bus manufacturing. Okay, Ansett's control ended in 1979 when the odious Rupert Murdoch's News Corp and Sir Peter Abel's TNT acquired the airline. Under their stewardship, the once proud Australian airline began its descent into chaos. Reginald Ansett, now a figurehead, watched as his life work was slowly dismantled. The airline that had once symbolized Australian enterprise and ingenuity was now at the mercy of corporate raiders. Murdoch and Abels milked the airline dry, running its aging fleet into the ground. By the late 90s, Ansett's international reputation for safety and service was tarnished, and its financial woes deepened. In September 2001, Ansett Airlines, now a shadow of its former self, faced its final reckoning. The airline collapsed under a mountain of debt, and 16,000 Australian jobs vanished overnight. The political fallout was fierce, with union leader Greg Combat declaring that those responsible couldn't even run a chook raffle. Air New Zealand, which was Ansett's parent company at the time, cut a deal with its government and Singapore Airlines, abandoning Ansett's employees to their fate. The blame game began with Air New Zealand pointing fingers at TNT and News Ltd for the debacle. Reginald Ansett, who had built an aviation empire from a single bus route, was gone. He passed away in December of 1981, but his legacy lived on in the memories of those who had flown on Ansett Airways, seen the airline's iconic logo, or benefited from his pioneering spirit.
Well, I was the last passenger to board an Ansett flight in Sydney.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
I was running late. And
That's why you're the last one.
Yeah, I was running late, and I'm running through to get on board. All these reporters are out there taking my photo. I was like, "What do I take my photo for?" I get on board, and I was traveling business class. I get on board, and I was the only one in business class. And I asked the girls. I said, "What's going on?" She goes, "Oh, this flight's going to be is the last flight. So when we land in Melbourne, that's it."
Wow.
I don't even know about it. You know? And then next morning I get faxes sent to me, or we had faxes back then, not emails. I had a fax sent to me of me on the front page of the Sydney Morning Herald.
Oh, man. I hope you got a copy of it.
Yes, I have.
All right. So continuing with our travel theme here. So let me take you back to a time before the internet, before faxes,
Yeah.
before telephones, and even before Melbourne's trams rattled their way into the city's soul. There we go. This is a time when the quote-unquote knights of the road, the commercial travelers, roam the untamed wilds of Victoria with nothing but a saddlebag of samples, an iron constitution, and enough charm to sweet-talk a grumpy storekeeper into placing an order. These guys weren't just salesmen, they were the lifeblood of early business trailblazers with goods in one hand and whiskey in the other. So I found that ghost sign is in the heart of Melbourne. It's in the CBD. Inside a building. I had to actually go inside of a building. So Melbourne of the 1850s, that's a picture of it right here, was a skyline of mostly dust, dreams, and gold fever. A young Irishman named W. Bell Jackson rolled into town after striking out on the diggings. So what was he going to do? He slapped on a suit, mounted a horse, and started selling goods across Victoria. There were no railways, no telegraphs, no weekly mail service. Just bush tracks, country hotels, and the occasional bullock cart full of supplies. Jackson didn't just deliver goods, he delivered hope. His arrival at a remote outback store was the social highlight of the season, part sales pitch, part therapy session, and part manual labor. So early road warriors like Jackson braved sheepwalks, goldfields, and forests to peddle everything from tools to tea. They were paid in gold nuggets. They stored things by strapping them under their shirts or stuffing them in their boots because saddlebags were just an invitation for bandits. Their stories were part business, part Wild West adventure. By the 1880s, the Knights of the Road had become an army. Business was booming, towns were growing, and the Commercial Travelers Association, or the CTA, was born in a pub because, of course, it was. This is Australia. 4 blokes sitting in the commercial room of a Coleraine hotel decided it was time to formalize their fraternity of road-hardened salesmen. The first meeting in Melbourne in 1880 drew 40 travelers. By 1907, the Victorian branch alone had 1,288 members, and assets were worth £46,000. It was serious money back then. Fast forward to the early 20th century, and commercial travelers had become indispensable. They were no longer lone rangers with saddlebags, they were specialists, just pushing a single product: sugar, tea, crockery, you name it. By this time, a country storekeeper might see 40 or 50 travelers a week. Business was fast, fierce, and increasingly cutthroat. These men had to be sharp, persistent, and smoother than a Melbourne flat white. The art of the deal wasn't born in some sterile boardroom. It was forged around campfires and over pub counters. So this building is still standing. By the early 20th century, these wandering salesmen had a proper home base, Commerce House at 328 to 330 Flinders Street, which is where I found that sign. Complete with billiard tables, reading rooms, and 70 bedrooms for members who needed a rest after a long week of hustling. There it is. I just took that picture last week. Designed by architects H.W. and F.B. Tompkins and completed in 1913, this marvel was the tallest building in Melbourne before the Manchester Unity Building rose. It may have adhered to the City of Melbourne's height limit regulations, but it loomed large as a symbol of the Commercial Travelers Association's success. Think of it as a cross between a gentleman's club and a sales conference with better whiskey. Commerce House wasn't just a building, it was a sanctuary. Here, weary travelers could enjoy accommodation, meals, and camaraderie after slogging through rural Victoria's bush tracks and dirt roads under really terrible, deplorable conditions. Inside, members found a club complete with smoking rooms, dining halls, and everything they needed to recharge before heading back to the trenches of early Australian commerce. All these photos I just took last week, by the way, so it's still in quite good, pristine condition. Very nice. The CTA thrived because it adapted. It grew into an institution complete with loan funds, relief programs, mortuary benefits because, given the risk of the road, and even a scholarship fund for their kids. It raised the bar for country hotels, ensuring travelers didn't have to sleep in calico tents anymore. And its members didn't just sell products, they sold the future. They were on the front line of Victoria's transformation from a pioneer outpost to a thriving economy. These men were hustlers in the truest sense, operating in an era when business was personal, competition was brutal, and survival meant outworking and outdrinking your rivals. They weren't just part of history, they were the ones who wrote it, one dusty bush track at a time. Today, Commerce House is a bougie hotel, a far cry from the rough and tumble days of the commercial travelers of old. But the tales of the Knights of the Road, the original Wild West salesmen and their exploits, inspire us to saddle up, metaphorically, of course, and take on our own wild frontiers. Very nice. Has anyone been in there? They do have a nice little, they have a nice pub, a little place to drink. They've got a nice restaurant in there. Highly recommend going in and just taking a wander because it has a lot of the old stuff still in there. It's quite beautiful. All right, so we're going to talk about the Great Australian Road Trip, meat pies, and ghost signs. A look at the rise of Aussie tourism. So there's nothing more bonza than the Great Australia Road Trip. I love that word, bonza. Bonza! So this sign I found hanging on Flinders Street Station of all places for the Australian National Travellers Association, conjuring images of sunburnt families squabbling in the back of a Holden Kingswood on meandering, winding Australian roads. Back in the day, the highways weren't just roads, they were battlefields where siblings duked it out over games of I Spy and argued about which dodgy milk bar had the real world's best vanilla slice, which I think is still going on today. Dad would threaten to turn this car around, and Mom would dole out Vegemite sandwiches, and somewhere along the way, the wheels of a nation's nostalgia were set in motion. But this wasn't just some spontaneous national pastime. It was dreamed up by a band of tourism execs at the Australian National Travellers Association, or ANTA, who made it their mission to sell Australia to Australians and the world. ANTA came into existence in 1929, back when Aussies couldn't afford a visit to Bali, let alone Europe. The Great Depression had everyone pinching pennies, and the idea of taking a holiday meant hitching a ride to the next town over if you were lucky. Here's some folks having a nice little camp out in their backyard. But a man named C.H. Holmes, who was ANTA's first director and a man with a vision and probably a tan, had other ideas. See Australia first, he declared, most likely flashing a smile as wide as the outback. Holmes was relentless, rallying state tourism bureaus like a general assembling his troops. He pitched Australia as a land of contrast. Within hours, you could be basking in Australia's sunshine, like these lovely ladies here from the 70s, or you could freeze your bits off in a winter wonderland. And his posters promised snow-dappled peaks, like this one here, the shimmering coastlines, and rugged outback adventure, all accessible by train, car, or sheer bloody determination. The gentleman riding a camel. Those posters decorated every railway station from Brighton to Brisbane. They practically screamed, pack a suitcase, grab a thermos, and hit the road. You won't regret it. By the 1950s, Australians weren't just dreaming of adventure, they were living it. The post-war baby boom of affordable Holdens and mandated annual leave turned the great Aussie road trip into a national sport. Combis packed to the brim with beach chairs, thermoses of scalding hot Rover tea, and kids fighting over who got the window seat became a regular sight. The highways were a wild ride of bumpy bitumen and roadside attractions. Families pulled over to snap photos of the big pineapple, or devour meat pies at a servo bakery that swore that theirs was award-winning despite no evidence of an award in sight. Kangaroos bounced through paddocks, bottles of Terax sloshed in the glove box, and radios blasted Slim Dusty or Sherbet, depending on the decade. As the decades rolled on, road trips went from rustic to almost glamorous. Motels with neon signs promised modern amenities like hot showers and foxtail palm trees out front. Caravan parks became the heart of family holidays where kids made lifelong friends over nightly barbecues and parents cracked open ice-cold VBs under the stars. Hosting the Pacific Travel Association Conference in 1957, ANTA took Aussie tourism global, luring international delegates who gawked at Bondi Beach and the Great Ocean Road. They left buzzing with stories of sunburnt surfers and outback sunsets. But ANTA didn't forget its domestic mission. Posters still lured Aussies to Coolangatta's Golden Sands, Tasmania's Alpine Peaks, and Kangaroo Island's fishing hotspots. Even Adelaide got its moment in the spotlight as a gateway to the rugged gorges of Morialta. ANTA didn't just promote tourism, it cemented a way of life. Its posters, campaigns, and ghost signs still haunt railway stations and Instagram feeds, reminding us of simpler times when a map, a meat pie, and a dream were all you needed. Next time you're cramming the car boot with beach towels and eskies full of Vegemite sandwiches, think of the families who blaze trails on bumpy highways, dodging potholes and Aussie wildlife. Every selfie at the Big Banana, every world's best pie eaten at a bakery that hasn't seen a review in decades owes a debt to those early travelers. All of that from this sign. So throw on some Paul Kelly, hit the road, and remember, Australia isn't just a destination, it's an adventure. Whether you're in a Kingswood, a Combi, or a Kia Sportage, the spirit of the great Australian road trip lives on. Just don't forget to argue about the pies. It's a tradition. All right. Got one more here for you. This one is in my book, but I thought, considering, we're talking about stamps and stuff. This is where stamps were bought and sold and sent for decades. Not now. Not now. I did say word, didn't I? I've only had one. It was a blazingly hot day in Melbourne, the kind where your shoes could melt into the footpath if you stay still long enough. But you wouldn't have guessed it as I plunged into the shadowy laneways surrounding the city's former Grand Post Office. General Post Office, the GPO. Yeah. And there's quite a lot of ghost signs still along the GPO if you know where to look. This isn't just a building, it's a stamp of time, an emblem of the city, a monumental love letter to the past. I dodged tourists and shoppers lost in the maze of postage paths, stumbling through a time warp, with each old sign acting as a portal to the past, mocking the modern world just a stone's throw away. There's the first post office. Since 1861, the Melbourne GPO has seen more stories than a mailbag at Christmas. It replaced an older post office, this one here, built in Melbourne's early days in 1837. Now, its Grand Hall is currently the playground for fast fashion giant H&M. But it was once a buzzing ballet of mail sorters, a whirlwind of weird letters and parcels waltzed to the rhythm of urgency and importance. That's what it used to look like. And if you look, you can still see, yeah, same windows.
Yes.
It really hasn't changed that much, except that full of cheap tops and flip-flops. There you go. I strolled around this architectural behemoth, unearthing ghost signs like forgotten postcards in a dusty drawer. The old outdoor windows where Melburnians once queued enduring scorching sun and torrential rain to interact with clerks now stand quiet and empty. A spectral sign for attention, ring bell, hangs beneath one. And a helpful arrow pointed to instructions to press bell, a reminder of a time when communication was a delicate dance of ink, paper, and patience. 1887 witnessed the GPO sprout another level, its clock tower reaching for the skies, a timekeeper ticking through the decades as it watched over the comings and goings of countless stories and secrets. Then, 1913 saw the building transforming its vast sorting hall into a public postal palace, a place echoing with voices and machinery enveloped in a smoky haze. Imagine the relentless hum of machinery, the straining of voices amidst a fog of cigarette and pipe smoke. It was postal pandemonium. For decades, this building reigned as the hub of Melbourne's communication network until 2001, when its postal soul flickered out. But wait, there's more madness to this tale. Tucked away on Little Burke Street, right behind the GPO, stands a building that's a chapter to itself. Its facade is adorned with a ghost sign for the clearing office of enemy debts, public trustee, and custodian of expropriated property, meaning it was responsible for dealing with debts to enemies in wartime, managing customer assets, and taking care of seized property. So it's a piece of postal history dating back from 1890. The sign is from around 1890. Originally, the Post Office Savings Bank and Money Order Office. Designed by Peter Kerr, the man behind the Parliament House, it was a response to Melbourne's explosive growth, an architectural band-aid to the swelling crowds at the GPO. By 1913, the Age newspaper lambasted the GPO as an atrocious anachronism, overrun with endless queues and chaos. It was like stepping into a Kafkaesque labyrinth where letters vanished into thin air, leaving only bewilderment in their wake. The author of the article playfully mused, and I quote, Letters have a propensity for going astray when consigned to the General Post Office, which might almost be attributed to occult influence. So dark and mysterious has been their sudden and incomprehensible disappearance. A couple years later, in 1915, the narrative shifts again. This dead letter and money order office scampered back to the GPO, leaving the money order building to morph into a chameleon of purposes. From a war museum to government offices to a hotel, and now a chic space for residential and commercial purposes, complete with the subterranean beneath driver lane bar, where ghosts of the past might join you for a drink. Has anyone been to beneath driver lane? It is excellent, and when you go there and look, it's almost like the torture chamber of like an old like castle almost. Everything is bluestone and arch, and it was the dead letter office. So yeah, well, obviously it's speakeasy, but yeah, interesting. The tale of Melbourne's GPO and its companion is a story stamped in the history of the city, sealed with the spirit of times gone by and delivered to the present, waiting to be read and remembered. As I roam these streets with camera in hand, capturing the visual markers of this tale, it struck me. The most endearing legacies of Melbourne are etched into the stones of buildings like the GPO, quietly hiding tales of days gone by, waiting to be unearthed and remembered in the hustle and bustle of the present. I do love this building. Beautiful. Melbourne is a city of layers. Some are painted, some are plastered, and they're beginning to peel away by the weather of time. This particular sign is on Elizabeth Street. To get this, I had to talk my way into a Thai waxing place and talk my way into leaning out of the window to take this. I think the American accent helped. If you know where to look, every crack and flake tells a story. You just have to be willing to stop, squint, and let the ghost of Melbourne speak. There you go. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
To be like,
Need another glass of wine.
Well, thank you, Sean. I hope everybody enjoyed that as much as I did. I saw Sean do this about 18 months ago using different ghost signs, but it gives you a unique look at what Melbourne looks like from many, many years ago. Thing is, without Sean, we wouldn't even have this anachronism called ghost sign. Everybody is saying, I remember the sign that was painted on that building 20 years ago. Well, now we've got someone who's saying, hey, I'm going to put my hand up, take photos of these, because these signs will disappear. It's only a matter of time. And yet, and this is what Sean does. He's catalogued these signs, not only in Melbourne, he's gone to Ballarat, some of those other country towns. And they also existed in that book there. I mean, I've got a copy of it. It's a great coffee table book. If you need something for someone for Christmas, buy one of these or buy one for yourself. You know? So with that, Sean, thank you so much.
No, thank you. Yeah.
I hope everybody enjoyed it and give him the clap that he deserves.
Sean, you'll love Hobart if you get a chance to go down there then.
Why didn't you give us a skipping girl?
It's in my book. You got to buy the book.
That's in your book, is it? Hobart,
No,
you've
the
done it.
Skipping Girl is great. Yeah. Step right up. Step right up. No, the Skipping Girl. Yeah, beautiful. I love the Skipping Girl. And the story of the Skipping Girl is so interesting because the sign that we see today is from the 1970s. I'm not sure if everyone knows that. The original was demolished at the time after the company went out of business, and Waylon the Wrecker sold it to a used car salesman who I think wanted to eventually put it up on his building but never got around to it. So it rusted to the point by the time the calls to put it back up, they basically just had to redo it. So yeah, the one we see today is from the 1970s. But it is amazing. Anytime you see a photo of the Skipping Girl, everyone everyone can say, oh, I used to see that on the way to my grandma's house, or that's how I knew we were almost home. Or some people like on my Instagram were like, my parents got engaged under the Skipping Girl sign. So it means a lot to people, and I love the Skipping Girl sign. Skipping Girl sign is also only one of 4 heritage listed signs, I think, that are within Melbourne. they're all neon signs. The Skipping Girl sign, the Nilek sign, the Pellegrini sign, and no, I don't think the Palaco sign is heritage listed, but it's the building is in a heritage overlay, so I think it's safe. But the fourth sign was the Basari's bicycle sign. Bygone Street. Yeah, so yeah.
We saw one today, and that's you're in Toorak Road, and the Toorak Post Office has sorting finish sign. They will turn on and turn off, so you can go to your post office box.
Yeah, I should get out there and take pictures of it before they take it down. I do have a couple other really beautiful post office signs that I found. One in Canterbury has some of their old signs at the post office. One in Parkville's old post office, which I think is a family home now, but it has some really beautiful signs in the window for money orders. And there's another one right there by Windsor Station, another beautiful old post office with some really great ghost signs. Yeah. I didn't want to make it all. I could have done all post offices, but I thought you might. I thought you might want a few other things. Yeah.
All right, what we'll do is that we'll pack up for now, as in let Sean do his thing. We've still got more food and drink that's there for everybody. And thank you, and thanks, Sean.
Thanks for having me.
Because this is something that which I'm pretty passionate about too. The advertising side of it, there on the walls.
Wow.
All right.
Oh.
Frank will go.
Hold up.
Yeah.
So, good night, Zoom.
All right, guys, let's go. Thank you.
I hope they were like just staring at my face the whole time.
All right, guys, in Zooland. Zoomland, we're gonna
$59.99.
finish up now. And,
Okay.
got Christmas, everyone, New Year, and hopefully I'll see you guys
I take cash.
in Sydney.
Okay.
Okay, have a good Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah, Frank.
Yeah, check it out. You can try before you buy.
The price of the